And you're live.
Okay, we are, House Education, April 24th, 2025. We're gonna just spend a half hour. I've asked the rest of the council to come in and just help us understand tuitioning in Vermont. How are tuition rates set at all grade levels for public schools, for independent schools that meet EQS, all of that. So that's gonna run through the statute and just jump in with any questions you have as we go along. All yours.
Thank you. Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm not even gonna ask, I'm just gonna share my screen.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is chapter 21. The title of chapter 21 is Maintenance of Public Schools. This is our tuition program chapter in Title 16. And so sections 821 and 822, I'll just open 821 for an example, is where the requirement to maintain a school is. So each district shall maintain. Another way to think of that is operate within the district in which the elementary education for its resident students for kindergarten through grade 6 is provided. So this is for elementary school, unless the electorate authorizes the school board to pay tuition, the school district is organized to provide only high school, or the General Assembly provides otherwise, and then there's some exceptions here. It's a similar process for high school, so they have to maintain or provide tuition, and then certain exceptions are laid out there. Public high school choice is the public high school choice program. We're not going to look at that. When we're talking about the town tuition program, and you're interested in understanding how tuition rates are set, section 823 and section 824 are going to be your go-tos. So section 8, and then so it's slightly different for elementary and high school. So for elementary, and remember, this is all current law. So tuition for elementary students is paid by the district in which the student is a resident. And so there's public school tuition and independent school tuition. So for public schools, the district shall pay the full tuition charged to students attending a public elementary school. My guess is your school districts have a policy on accepting out of district students and what tuition they're going to charge. And then there is some language here about if the payment made to a public elementary school is 3% more or less than the calculated net cost per pupil. Calculated net cost per pupil is actually a calculation that the agency does, and there's a whole statute on it. Then there's a reconciliation process for public schools.
So I'm gonna just stop and unpack that a little bit. What that means is that if you're off by 3% in what you set your tuition at, you might be either refunding money to a sending district or billing a sending district because you didn't charge enough.
However, lots of exceptions here. The boards of both receiving and sending districts may enter into tuition agreements with differing terms from the provisions of those subsections, provided that the receiving district must offer identical terms to all sending districts, and further provided that the statutory provisions apply to any sending district that declines the offered terms.
Could you unpack that a little bit?
Yes. So if school districts can come up with their own agreements, they don't have to pay the full tuition charge to students. It could be more, it could be less, it could vary. There's no guidelines other than they can come up with a different agreement.
And that agreement must be the same for all.
Right. So if you are a receiving district, you are welcoming students into your school under the public tuition program, you must essentially charge everyone the same.
Okay. So they might say, this is an economic boon to our school district. We are going to charge well under the actual cost that we've calculated because we believe it's money.
There's nothing in here other than they're able to enter into tuition agreements with terms differing
Okay.
It says they have to offer it, but the sending district could decline that offer and revert to that assessment.
So let's look at 825B, so maximum tuition rate, net cost per pupil. So in no case shall the tuition charged be such that the ratio of the total tuition received to the total cost of operation of the receiving school or school district exceeds the ratio of the number of tuition paying students to the total number of students enrolled in the school district. And what 823 is saying is we're notwithstanding that. So there really is, it's gonna vary what
Right.
that looks like.
Yeah.
But in general, if someone were to just say, how do you determine the tuition to a public elementary school? It's that second sentence there. The district shall pay the full tuition charge to students attending a public elementary school.
Right.
And that tuition is gonna vary from school to school.
And you will, I think, in a little bit, tell us about
Yes.
how that's calculated,
Oh,
or that,
no.
yeah, but not
Yeah,
the details of it, but that.
Yes, there are certain things, yes, we'll get there.
Yeah.
So that's for public schools. Subsection B is for approved independent schools. So another except, we're starting off with the exception here. Unless the electorate of a school board authorizes payment of a higher amount at an annual or special meeting warned for that purpose. So the voters have to approve that. It's not a school board decision. The tuition paid to an approved independent elementary school or an independent school meeting education quality standards, which is everyone familiar with what that is, an independent school meeting education quality standard? It's extremely intuitive. It is just an approved independent school that follows EQF. I believe there's one.
Yeah.
And I believe it's actually substantial compliance. Shall not exceed the least of, so whichever one of these is the cheaper option, they gotta go with that, right? Is that what that says? Shall not exceed the least of. The average announced tuition of Vermont Union Elementary Schools for the year of attendance. The tuition charged by the approved independent school for the year of attendance. Or the average per pupil tuition the district pays for its other resident elementary students in the year in which the student is enrolled in the approved independent school. So again, tuition to an approved independent elementary school is also going to vary depending on the school.
Mhm.
Because if a school is charging less than the average announced tuition, then this statute says you go with that. If a school is charging more than the average announced tuition, then you would go with either the average announced tuition or the average per pupil tuition that it's paying for other students, whichever's less. So again, it's going to vary from student to student, school to school. So high school.
Could you, talk about number 3 there in a, for example, school A, this school B?
I will
that?
try. Let me read that. The average per pupil tuition the district pays for its other resident elementary students in the year in which the student. So, I believe that this is saying you would take, if you are a non-operating district or you're not operating elementary grades and you're paying tuition for those grades, you would take the average of all of the tuition you're paying, and that would be one bar. And so if a student wants to go to school A and school A charges more than the tuition charged, if it charges, let's see,
Or is this referring to just all the kids at the one, at one?
I don't read it that way. It's because the average per pupil tuition the district pays for its other resident elementary students in the year in which the student is enrolled.
Yeah.
So I read that to be, you take all of your elementary students, what's the average you're paying across the board? And that's one of the options. If that is the lowest
Choose
option,
that.
then you have to choose that option.
Got it. The least of.
Mhm. Unless on B, up at the top there, unless the electorate authorizes payment of a higher amount.
Which is almost.
Which is usually what happens, isn't it?
It was news to me, I didn't realize that that for elementary school, there existed an average announced tuition. I thought that was strictly a high school thing.
So going over to high school. Again, tuition of residence pays tuition, or district of residence pays tuition. So except as otherwise provided for technical students, so CTE has its own chapter for those tuition rates, chapter 37. The district shall pay, again, the full tuition charge to students attending a public high school in Vermont or an adjoining state or a public or approved independent school in Vermont functioning as an approved area career technical center or an independent school meeting education quality standards. So
Tuition charge.
if an approved independent school meets EQS, then the district pays full tuition charge. I think there's only one. But if an approved independent school is functioning as an approved area CTE center, then the school district also pays the full tuition charge. And you've got at least two of those.
Right.
And so here on subdivision 1, you have that same, more or less than 3% concept. Notwithstanding the provisions of this subsection or subsection 825B of this title, again, school board of a receiving public school district, public or approved independent school functioning as an area of CTE or independent school meeting education quality standards may enter into tuition agreements with the boards of sending districts that have terms differing from the provisions of those subsections. Again, they have to offer identical terms. For independent schools, that's subsection C. The district shall pay an amount not to exceed the average announced tuition of Vermont Union High Schools for the year of attendance for its enrolled students. So for high school, it's just average announced tuition. If it's an approved independent school that's not functioning as a CTE center. But then the last phrase in that sentence, or any higher amount approved by the electorate. So again, the electorate could choose to spend more on tuition.
All right, so just to sum up here, essentially, and I know the next section talk about how tuition is calculated by public schools. I guess they calculate the cost. But essentially a public school or a independent school that meets EQS can set the tuition. They are not governed by the average announced tuition limit. If they feel it costs them $26,000 a student to educate a tuition student, they can charge that. And so just for the committee's benefit, a lot of people have asked me and sort of come up to me and said, oh my God, because we're getting charged so much for our high school students, we're having to cut our elementary school, which is not choice. And in many cases, what they're concerned about is what the public high school is charging their percentage.
Right.
So that's an excellent point. My understanding, and I will defer to the folks on the ground that are in the room, is that if a school district operates some grades and pays tuition for some grades, they're making those tuition payments first.
Yes.
They're making those tuition payments.
First,
Yes,
off the top of their school budget.
Right.
No choice.
because they have no choice.
Right.
And then what's left over is for the public school.
And when it's a public high school, they pay the full tuition.
Correct. Which all of a sudden creates a, sort of perverse incentive to encourage people to send students to,
Independent schools.
if you think about places on the New Hampshire border, to Kimball Union Academy.
Yeah.
Rather than to Springfield High School.
Right.
Because it's cheaper.
Public schools.
So this has been a challenging issue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's limited as to where it's a real problem, but, or even the Hanover High School is very expensive,
Yeah.
but.
But if it's oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Beth. and
I
then-
say if it's a CTE though. Cause the independent schools do have this limit unless they act as a CTE.
Right.
And then there's no limit.
Yeah, there's.
It's how it kind
so-
of looks.
Well, all right, so if we take St. John's Berry Academy, which does both. If you're not, I think that there's the average announced tuition.
Yeah.
For a student. And then. But they don't get to charge whatever they want just because they operate a CTE, if that student's not attending, not a CTE
Is
student.
that what it actually says?
I'm not quite sure how.
I think it
that-
kind of says if they operate a CTE, you pay more. Or
Yeah,
can pay
you
more
do.
than they
Even
announce.
if that student's
Even if
not
the kid isn't
enrolled.
taking-
This doesn't
CTE
say
classes.
anything about enrollment
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
TEP program.
Okay, so that must be why you hear about
Yes.
towns that send to BBA having to have votes.
Yeah.
And towns that send to St. J not having votes,
Or I have LI in my district,
which also has
which
CTE.
is CTE.
Yeah.
It's all great education here.
Oh,
But remember, this is all parent choice.
true.
So even if you're talking about incentives to send to one school or another, it's ultimately up to the parents or the family to decide where those children are going.
Yes. Yeah, Emily.
So I just want to, I don't know, I'm not gonna have an opinion about why a public school system would have a rate that is higher than an independent school in the region. Because I don't have any reason myself to know why, but I'm gonna speculate that, often our schools are dealing, our public, especially high schools, elementaries too, are dealing with a decline in enrollment. And when you have a decline in enrollment, you're gonna find any way you possibly can to add the revenue where you can in whatever way possible. So I think this is one of those things where we're getting pain every direction. They're not charging a lot of money because a higher rate of tuition just because they can, because they're trying to keep programs in the.
Well, it goes to the even bigger concept of, the more we sort of let students leak out of the system,
Correct.
we are not having them in the system, so that per pupil cost just keeps going up. That we're gonna try.
Exactly. I just wanted to put a face on why that might be happening. It's just tough.
All right.
So let's look at how that tuition rate is calculated. And my initial reaction to your chair was I am not giving an Ed Finance 101 primer here. But yes. so
I needed
Yep.
more understanding that, what are the guardrails?
Yep, so maximum tuition rate, calculated net cost per pupil. So calculated net cost per pupil for the purposes of this chapter shall be defined by the secretary. And they actually have, let's see if I can do it easily here. Okay, Wi-Fi is not cooperating. So expenditures shall include those for equipment and school building construction additions or renovations. Expenditures excluded shall be transportation costs incurred by the receiving school district for its resident students. Transportation costs for which the receiving school district receives reimbursement. That portion of the total cost that is provided by direct grants from state or federal sources for salaries or other specific expenses. Expenditures for maintenance and payments of principal and interest for buildings used exclusively for boarding students, if any. Expenditures for special education and tuition payments for CTE. In no case shall the tuition charge be such that the ratio of the total tuition received, this is what's excluded when we talk about the different school districts making agreements with each other. That the ratio of the total tuition received to the total cost of operation of the receiving school or school district exceeds the ratio of the number of tuition paying students to the total number of students enrolled in the school or school district. And then there's a complaint purpose, or a complaint process. If someone feels that funds are not being used appropriately. So let's see if I can get to the net cost per pupil here.
So just for, committee thinking, as we think about educational transformation, this all sort of goes away. under the proposal.
Yeah.
The money would just follow the student and you get what you get.
So AOE's website, it's no longer really called net cost per pupil, it's called the announced tuition. And, it's, it's referring to the same pieces of law that we just walked through. You can see up at the top here, the average announced tuition for Union Elementary schools is 19,000. And for Union High School, so 7 through 12 is 20,000. That's next year.
Oh, sorry.
It's just the most recent one that I
Right.
pulled up. So it's the same pieces of law that we just looked at, and they literally list every
How they figure it out.
school. And they don't list any of their methodology, like they don't
Oh, they
list
just
any of,
list
it's
that.
just the school
Yeah.
and the rate.
Yeah.
So if you're curious, it's all on AOE's website, and, it goes back, let's see, to 2014.
Quick question, is it, Thetford that follows the CTE? I guess not the CTE, the
Designation.
EQS.
Oh,
It's
EQS,
Sharon.
is it
It's
Sharon?
Sharon.
I thought that one of the 4 academies did.
No,
No, it's Sharon.
No,
Who's it?
Thetford, it does, they're the one school that has designation.
they have designated.
Okay,
The students from Thetford are designated to go to
Right.
Thetford
I
Academy.
was just,
They don't have a choice.
wow,
So looking at that, because,
jeez.
does Thetford have a CTE?
No,
No. LI does and St. J does,
correct,
but none of those other ones.
correct, correct.
so it is interesting, if you look at Thetford Academy, what does it say, 25?
25, 60.
Yes.
But yet, I don't think that that's what they charge public school.
This is the average announced
Right,
tuition.
because you can
Or
make
no,
your
I'm
own,
sorry, this is the announced tuition rates.
you can make your own agreements, right?
Right, so they must have an agreement that says for publicly funded students, we charge the average announced tuition.
And you can see it's for every, I believe it's organized by SU. No, yeah, SU. And then the school districts within it are all listed individually. So again, this is not my work, but it is on the agency's
Yeah.
website if you are interested in it.
Yeah.
And then the secretary, this is the requirement that what we looked at gets published.
Mhm.
So, but actually it's not. It's that every school that proposes to increase tuition charges shall notify the school board of the school district from which its non-resident students come and the secretary of the proposed increase on or before January 15th. The school board or the board of trustees, I'm not gonna get into special education funding, that's also different. Yeah, special education funding is different. Designation. If a school district, if a non-operating school district goes the designation route, which I think there's one maybe.
Thetford going to Thetford.
Then it is, let's see. Shall be regarded as a public school. So full tuition charge.
Okay. That answers
That
that
answers that.
previous question,
Yeah.
I think.
There are, this is the statute that you amended in H 454. This is whose school districts are allowed to pay tuition to. This is where we talk about how do we know that recognized independent schools are not eligible to receive tuition? Literally because they're not listed here. Yeah. Pre-K is different. The pre-K, will be important for any work you do on tuition in this area going forward. I think that this was a very commonly misunderstood concept, that the pre-kindergarten Act 166 universal pre-K tuition is completely separate from your town tuition program. It is just, the considerations are different. The amount of rates are different. It's just all different. It is not an apples to apples comparison. Let's see.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, this is kind of an embarrassingly dumb question. And the money for those, that the universal pre-K
Mhm.
is funded,
School budget.
Okay,
It's
yes.
part of your education spending.
okay,
Offset by a weight.
right.
Offset by what?
Oh, wait, you gotta wait for a pre-K.
Oh, right.
It's just very different.
Yep.
It's, okay, sorry. And that is, that's like a lump sum that doesn't vary based on,
Correct.
It's
Right,
10
it's-
hours
Yeah.
and there's a calculation or a reference base and then there's an inflator. And so it doesn't matter where you go, whether it's a public program in another district
Mhm.
or a pre-qualified private provider, so private programs, it's the same rate.
Yep.
But if your school district is operating a pre-K program,
Yeah,
it could be a full day program and the school district is just building that into their
Yeah.
budget and funding it that way.
but the non-district operated programs, there's like a cap there that's not, unlike with tuition that we're talking about here, you know, there's not that huge
It's just 10
variability.
10 hours.
Yeah,
and
It
it's
really
the same
is
rate.
much more like a voucher.
Yep.
right, okay,
And the requirements, it is still parent choice,
right,
but what qualifies is for instance, it's just Vermont. It's
Right.
limited to programs in Vermont. There's some outdated language that I would love to get rid of someday. Is there no?
Would you, work up whatever you need to work up for language to get rid of outdated language? And we might tack it onto the miscellaneous ed bill.
Great. Hopefully that's coming to you very soon.
Yes.
So I would get rid of this. So these school districts are not school districts anymore, I don't believe.
Oh. They were.
So you can see this was added in 1993 and last updated in 2007. And then, I think it is. This one? No.
They're not school
They're all
district anymore
now-
because they're part of Kingdom Choice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now.
And then there's somewhere else with a similar exception for school districts that don't exist anymore.
Oh, yes, yes.
I don't remember which statute it is
Right.
in, but yes, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Tuition overcharge or undercharge really quickly. This is just the reconciliation process, that 3% and how the money flows and when that happens and all of that. And then I still don't understand why school facilities management, training and certification and capital improvement plan were put in this chapter.
Maintenance.
Yeah, maybe school.
But depending on what you all do next year, in your future state, we may want to move those out of there and put them in the school district chapter.
Yeah.
Um,
And you may want to remind us to do that.
oh, I will. Duty of care, this is an interesting one. Again, this does not belong here. It belongs probably in the school district chapter. Each school district and its employees owe its students a duty of ordinary care to prevent the students from being exposed to unreasonable risk from which is foreseeable the injury is likely to occur. School districts and their employees do not owe their students a duty of immediate supervision at all times and under all circumstances.
Interesting.
We are a litigious society.
I've basically been told I am
Well,
the teacher.
I mean, there's a whole host of other
It's a
things.
42-year-old statute.
I like it.
Yes. So, again, I don't think this is the right place for it. But otherwise, we've gone through every section in your town tuition program chapter, which is really entitled Maintenance of Public Schools, but it's not about maintaining public
Right.
schools. It's
So-
about, tuitioning students.
Right. So I had a member come up to me yesterday and say, wow, we're paying a lot in high school tuition. They all go to most of them go to public schools for high school, but on a tuition basis. And said, is there anything what we can do about that? And I said, not really.
Say that again?
He was basically saying, our school budget is getting killed at the elementary level because what we're paying for tuition is so high.
Mhm.
Some have said it's causing us to go over the excess spending threshold. We have no control over that.
We hear it.
Is there anything we can do about it? And, I mean, the answer is basically no. If you want to keep the system that you have,
Right.
but I suppose you could designate and negotiate.
Well,
Well,
we could can they get an excess spending threshold exemption
There's-
theoretically?
Yeah, no, all
Yeah,
I'm
as
saying
many
is,
Based on
no, no,
spending.
things we
the
could do
question to
about
me
it.
was,
Yeah.
right now.
Oh, right now.
Yeah,
Yes.
not is there anything the legislature can
Oh,
do,
but
but is
like
there anything our
right
school
now.
board can
Oh,
no.
because I was say we have a bill.
do? Yeah,
and
no,
all
it's
sorts
all-
of-
we
You
can do all
mean,
kinds
you
of
mean
stuff.
now?
Yeah, no, but he was
Okay.
like, he's like, I just want to be able to tell my school board that, no,
Mm,
you're really kind of stuck.
Under the current statute.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. That was
Thank you. That
very
was
informative,
interesting.
even though I probably heard the presentation 5 times.
That was not a
I need it.
presentation.
That's right.
it's like watching God.
All right, so we are back here
At